Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the Islamic SHAHADA channel. Tucked between Nigeria, Togo, Burkina Faso, and Niger, the Republic of Benin is a relatively small country on the coast of West Africa. With a population of approximately 14.6 million people in 2025, it may not immediately stand out on the global stage. Yet, despite its modest size, Benin is home to one of the most fascinating stories of religious coexistence and transformation in the region. This land, once part of powerful kingdoms and later shaped by French colonial rule, has grown into a diverse nation where multiple faiths intersect. Religion in Benin is not confined to a single tradition. Christianity has been deeply rooted since the colonial era. Islam has flourished through centuries of trade and cultural exchange, and traditional spiritual practices, most famously Vodun or Voodoo, remain central to the identity of millions. This unique religious mosaic has long been a defining feature of the Beninese people, shaping their communities, rituals, and worldview. But within this pluralistic setting, one particular faith is experiencing remarkable growth. In recent decades, Islam has expanded its presence across Benin, drawing new followers and reshaping the religious landscape. The numbers tell a compelling story. Muslims now make up roughly a quarter of the population, and their proportion has been steadily rising. This rapid growth raises an important question that will guide our exploration. Why is Islam expanding so quickly in this small West African nation? The story of Islam in Benin begins not with conquest, but with commerce. For centuries, caravans of traders crossed the vast Sahara Desert, linking North Africa with the savannas of West Africa. Among them were Muslim merchants from Mali, Songhai, and later the Hausa of northern Nigeria. They carried more than salt, cloth, and gold. They carried ideas, languages, and a faith that would quietly but profoundly reshape the region. Through the bustling markets and trading posts of the Sahel, Islam first reached the lands that would eventually become modern-day Benin. In the northern territories of Benin, particularly in regions like Borgu and Alibori, local kingdoms interacted directly with Muslim traders and clerics. Some rulers embraced Islam, seeing it not only as a spiritual path but also as a means of strengthening political alliances and connecting their courts to the wider Muslim world. The adoption of Islamic practices, such as Arabic literacy, Quranic recitation, and Islamic law, helped enhance the authority of these leaders while binding their communities to the economic and cultural networks that stretched across West Africa. Yet Islam in Benin never spread in isolation. It coexisted with deeply rooted traditional religions that remained central to the lives of many communities. The people of Benin practiced rich spiritual systems tied to nature, ancestors, and deities, beliefs that would later influence the global tradition of Vodun or Voodoo. As Islam expanded, it often blended with local customs, creating unique expressions of faith that reflected the complex identity of the region. The colonial era added another layer of complexity. When France established its control over Benin in the late 19th century, it brought with it Catholic missionaries and later Protestant movements. Christianity spread widely, especially in the southern and coastal areas where colonial administration was strongest. For a time, it seemed as if Islam might be overshadowed by the growing influence of European institutions and the promotion of Christian education. But Islam proved resilient. While Christianity flourished in the south under colonial patronage, Islam remained deeply rooted in the north and continued to grow through local networks of scholars, teachers, and families. Rather than disappearing, Islam adapted. Mosques were built, Quranic schools multiplied, and Islamic leaders maintained strong cultural influence even under colonial rule. By the time Benin gained independence in 1960, Islam had secured its place as one of the nation's enduring religious traditions. Today, the legacy of this history is clear. Islam in Benin is not a recent arrival, but a faith woven into the nation's fabric for centuries, surviving colonial disruption and thriving alongside Christianity and traditional religions. As of 2025, the Republic of Benin is home to approximately 14.6 million people, a nation that is demographically young, with nearly half of its citizens under the age of 20. Within this population, Islam represents one of the fastest-growing faith traditions. Estimates vary depending on the source, but most surveys place the proportion of Muslims in Benin between 24 and 28%. This marks a notable increase over the past decade, with some studies, such as those conducted by Pew Research, indicating a rise of nearly 8 percentage points since 2010. This upward trend is significant in a country where Christianity continues to be the single largest faith community, accounting for around 48% of the population. Catholicism, introduced during the French colonial period, remains particularly strong in the southern regions, while Protestant and evangelical movements have expanded rapidly in urban centers. Alongside these global religions, Benin remains one of the few countries in the world where traditional beliefs such as Vodun retain a powerful social presence. Rituals, festivals, and spiritual practices tied to Vodun are not only preserved, but also embraced as part of national heritage, giving Benin a uniquely pluralistic religious landscape. The growth of Islam, however, is unevenly distributed across the country. In the northern provinces, Alabori, Borgo, and Donga, Muslims often form local majorities, with Islam woven into the fabric of everyday life through mosques, Quranic schools, and family traditions. In contrast, the coastal and southern regions, particularly around Cotonou and Porto Novo, are more religiously diverse. Here, Muslims live side by side with Christians and practitioners of Vodun, creating vibrant communities where multiple faiths intersect. Despite being a minority nationwide, Muslims are increasingly visible in urban areas, where migration, commerce, and education bring together people of different backgrounds. This demographic mosaic highlights both the resilience of Islam and the broader pluralism that defines Benin. The country is neither exclusively Muslim nor overwhelmingly Christian, but instead a nation where multiple religious traditions coexist, interact, and evolve. When examining why Islam is expanding in Benin today, several interconnected factors become clear. The first is demography. Muslim communities in Benin, especially in the north, tend to maintain higher fertility rates compared to the national average. In rural areas where access to healthcare and family planning is more limited, family sizes remain large, and this naturally translates into steady population growth within Muslim-majority regions. Over time, such demographic momentum has contributed significantly to the rising proportion of Muslims nationwide. Conversion also plays a role, though in more subtle and gradual ways. Across Benin's diverse religious landscape, many individuals who once adhered exclusively to Vodun traditions, or in some cases to Christianity, have embraced Islam, often due to personal relationships, marriage, or admiration for the discipline and communal solidarity found in Muslim communities. These conversions are not always dramatic or immediate. They frequently occur as part of a long process of exposure to Islamic practices, especially during festivals, neighborhood interactions, or through family networks that bridge different faiths. Education has been another key factor. The spread of Islamic schools, or madrasas, has created spaces where children learn not only Quranic recitation and Islamic law, but also practical literacy and numeracy skills. In some cases, these institutions serve as alternatives or complements to the public school system, especially in rural or underserved areas. Local imams and teachers play a dual role. They are both religious leaders and community educators. Their influence ensures that Islamic knowledge and identity remain strong across generations, while also offering families a sense of stability and belonging. Mobility and cross-border connections further accelerate Islam's growth. Benin shares borders with Nigeria, Niger, and Burkina Faso, countries with significant or majority Muslim populations. Traders, seasonal workers, and migrants bring with them not only goods, but also religious practices, cultural expressions, and networks of solidarity. In bustling cities like Cotonou, one can see mosques established by Hausa traders, Fulani pastoralists, and Yoruba Muslims, reflecting the regional and transnational nature of Islam's presence. These exchanges reinforce Islam as a dynamic and adaptable faith that moves with people and adapts to new environments. Finally, religion in Benin is often marked by a certain fluidity. Many people do not see a rigid boundary between faiths. It is common to find individuals who identify as Muslim yet continue to participate in Vodun rituals, whether out of respect for ancestral traditions or for perceived spiritual protection. Rather than being contradictory, this layering of identities reflects a pragmatic and inclusive worldview. For Islam in Benin, this flexibility allows it to integrate into existing cultural frameworks without demanding the complete abandonment of older traditions. Taken together, these factors, demographic growth, conversion, education, mobility, and the adaptive blending of identities, explain why Islam is not only surviving but steadily expanding within Benin's pluralistic society. The religion's growth is less about confrontation and more about integration. Islam is becoming a larger part of the national fabric while coexisting with Christianity and indigenous traditions in ways that are uniquely Beninese. One of the most striking aspects of Benin's religious life is the way Islam coexists alongside Christianity and Vodun, the indigenous spiritual tradition that remains deeply rooted in the country's cultural fabric. Unlike in many societies where religious affiliation often draws sharp boundaries between communities, in Benin, those boundaries are much more porous. It is not unusual to find entire neighborhoods where mosques, churches, and Vodun temples stand within walking distance of each other, reflecting a lived reality of shared spaces and mutual respect. This coexistence is perhaps most visible within families themselves. A single household in Benin might include a Muslim father, a Christian mother, and children who participate in both traditions, while still maintaining connections to ancestral Vodun rituals. Rather than causing conflict, this diversity is often embraced as a natural part of family life. It reflects a pragmatic approach to religion, where kinship and social harmony are valued over strict exclusivity of belief. Religious plurality in the home thus becomes a powerful training ground for tolerance, teaching individuals from a young age that faith can be diverse yet cohesive within the same social unit. The fluidity of religious identity in Benin is further reinforced by a tradition of syncretism. Many Beninese Muslims, for example, may attend Friday prayers at the mosque, but still participate in Vodun ceremonies to honor ancestors or seek spiritual protection. Similarly, Christians might celebrate church festivals while acknowledging the authority of Vodun priests in matters of healing or community rituals. Far from being contradictory, this blending of practices has created a unique form of religious coexistence, where belief systems are layered and intertwined rather than mutually exclusive. What makes this coexistence particularly significant is that it fosters a culture of tolerance that is both social and political. In everyday interactions, people rarely see faith differences as obstacles to friendship, marriage, or business. On a national scale, the government of Benin officially recognizes Vodun as part of the country's heritage, and January 10th is celebrated as National Vodun Day. Muslims and Christians not only respect this holiday, but often join in the festivities, demonstrating that cultural pride can transcend religious lines. Because of this lived pluralism, Benin has gained recognition as one of West Africa's most peaceful and tolerant nations when it comes to religion. It stands in contrast to neighboring countries that have experienced tension between religious groups. In Benin, the coexistence of Islam, Christianity, and Vodun is not seen as a weakness, but as a strength, a way of weaving together the nation's diverse history into a shared identity. This unique model of tolerance offers valuable lessons to a world where religious difference is too often a source of division rather than harmony. While Islam in Benin has been marked by remarkable growth and peaceful coexistence, the community today faces a series of contemporary challenges that reflect the broader dynamics of West Africa. One of the most pressing concerns is the security situation in the northern regions of the country, where Benin borders Niger and Burkina Faso. These areas have been increasingly vulnerable to the spillover of violence from militant groups operating in the Sahel. Extremist movements linked to Al-Qaeda and the so-called Islamic State have destabilized entire regions of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and their presence along Benin's northern frontier has raised alarm. Although Benin itself has not been a central battlefield, sporadic attacks and the infiltration of armed groups threaten to undermine the atmosphere of religious tolerance that has long characterized the nation. This security issue poses a dual challenge: protecting communities from violence while ensuring that Islam in Benin is not wrongly associated with extremism. Another challenge comes from the difficulty of tracking religious change through reliable data. The last comprehensive census in Benin that included detailed information on religious affiliation was conducted in 2013. Since then, estimates about the number of Muslims, Christians, and Vodun adherents have varied widely, often depending on local surveys or international reports. This lack of precise data complicates the ability of scholars, policymakers, and religious leaders to understand the true scope of Islam's expansion or to design policies that support interfaith harmony. In a country where religious demographics are shifting rapidly, the absence of updated official statistics leaves a gap in understanding both the opportunities and the tensions that come with such change. Meanwhile, urbanization and digital technology are reshaping the way young Muslims in Benin experience their faith. In cities like Cotonou, Perico, and Porto Novo, the younger generation is increasingly connected to global Muslim networks through smartphones and social media. They consume sermons from preachers in Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, or even Europe, blending local traditions with transnational interpretations of Islam. This global exposure enriches their spiritual lives, but also introduces debates that were less common in previous generations, such as differing views on religious orthodoxy, gender roles, and political Islam. The result is a new kind of religious consciousness, more informed, more diverse, but also potentially more divided, if not carefully managed. Finally, Benin's Muslims, like the rest of its population, face the challenge of navigating modernity without losing cultural roots. The balance between honoring Vodun heritage, practicing Islam or Christianity, and embracing modernization is delicate. For some, the adoption of modern lifestyles risks eroding traditional values, while for others it represents an opportunity to express faith in new ways. The tension between tradition and modernity, between global influences and local identities, is not unique to Benin, but it is particularly visible here because of the country's extraordinary pluralism. These challenges, security threats, the lack of reliable demographic data, the rapid transformation brought by urbanization and technology, and the struggle to balance modern life with ancestral traditions will shape the future of Islam in Benin. How the country responds to them will determine whether its current model of tolerance and coexistence can be sustained in the decades ahead. Looking ahead, the trajectory of Islam in Benin points towards steady and significant growth. If current demographic trends continue, Muslims, who already represent roughly a quarter of the national population, are expected to make up an even larger share in the next 2 to 3 decades. Higher fertility rates within Muslim communities, coupled with gradual conversions from both Christianity and traditional religions, suggest that Islam's influence will not only expand numerically, but also deepen socially and culturally. By the middle of the 21st century, it is likely that Muslims will form one of the strongest pillars of Benin's religious identity. This expansion does not imply the erosion of Benin's pluralism. On the contrary, Islam's growth is unfolding within a broader culture of coexistence that values diversity as a source of strength. As the religion becomes further integrated into the national identity, it has the potential to reinforce Benin's reputation as a land where different faiths live side by side in harmony. In a region where religious conflict has too often fueled instability, Benin stands out as a possible model for peaceful interfaith relations. The ability of Muslims, Christians, and Vodun practitioners to share space, celebrate together, and respect one another's traditions may serve as a guiding example for West Africa as a whole. In this sense, the future of Islam in Benin is not merely about numbers. It is about shaping the moral, cultural, and political fabric of the nation in ways that emphasize tolerance, dialogue, and resilience. If nurtured carefully, Benin could emerge as a center of interreligious harmony in the decades to come, a small nation whose approach to faith offers valuable lessons to the world. Islam in Benin is not merely a matter of numbers or demographic charts. It is woven into the very heartbeat of society. Behind every statistic lies a story of families, communities, and generations negotiating their place in a complex world of faith and tradition. The growth of Islam here is not about displacing what came before, but about finding space within an already rich religious mosaic. It demonstrates that a religion can expand and thrive without erasing the cultural heritage that has shaped a people for centuries. From the rural villages of the north, where the call to prayer blends with the rhythms of everyday farming life, to the bustling streets of southern cities like Cotonou, where mosques stand alongside churches and Vodun temples, Benin presents a living example of harmony. This is a society where tolerance is not just preached, but practiced daily, where faith becomes a bridge, not a barrier. The story of Islam's growth in Benin carries a lesson far beyond its borders. In a time when religion often appears in global headlines as a source of conflict, Benin shows another possibility: that faith can be a force of coexistence, dialogue, and resilience. Its pluralism is not a weakness, but a strength that binds communities together. In the end, this small West African nation offers a profound reminder: greatness is not always measured in size or power. Sometimes it is found in the quiet resilience of a people who choose tolerance over division and harmony over discord. Benin's story is indeed a lesson for the world. Thanks for watching until the end. I hope it was useful. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.